Hello and welcome to the Wolves Report. I'm Ryan Lester and thank you for joining us for episode 69. Tonight we'll be doing our best to analyse the Brighton game, the tactics and the players, take your questions, examine the style and the philosophy after two games and looking ahead to Everton. Delighted to have back on the show BBCWM's Steve Herman, who was a fan with a rare day off on Saturday, I believe. Also our director of football with his XG underlined there, Chris Tyler. And for his final show before he heads back over abroad again, former Chelsea and Fulham coach, Mr. Mark Cole. Going to be a bit more difficult show. We'll try and find some positives, but I know there's a lot of negativity out there. But let's say it how it is. Let's go. Mark, obviously, you were with me on Saturday. We were quite upbeat before the game. We've had some of that positivity beaten out of us, but I would love to get your take on the not the roast on the coast this time, but the 4-1 win to Brighton at Molineux.
Look, I mean, nobody likes to lose, and we got absolutely, we come away with a bit of a hammer in there, but I don't think the scoreline reflects the actual balance of the game. Let's put it into context first. Brighton, I mean, they're a very, very good side. I mean, since October 2022, when De Zerbi took charge, there's not been a better team with higher XG than his Brighton team. So they're a very, very good, well-coached, well-drilled side. They're probably going to get sponsored by Calvin Klein next year because they're going to have so many teams pants down. Let's be real here. Gary O'Neill's had less than 2 weeks to work with that team. So, we played well against United. I think that, artificially raised expectations. I think people might have expected us to not get anything against Brighton before with that United game. But since the United game, I think we might do something here. And Tyler and I foolishly, tipped us to maybe have a sneaky win before the game. But, they were very, very good. And they knew what they were doing. They targeted our weaknesses in defence. And, I think we could have gone into half-time easily if we'd taken our chances ahead. And then you're looking at something very different there, And I know it's kind of polarised opinions on Twitter. We didn't win. I know we didn't win. But the statistics and the probability shows that XG, if it remains high, we're going to turn those chances into goals at some point soon, and it's going to be a very different story. And that's very much the case yesterday. XG was matched with Brighton's. They took their chances and we didn't, and that for me epitomises the game perfectly.
We're going to go from pro XG to anti XG. Tyler, you was at Molineux yesterday. Great to see you before the game, but the reality check came home quite quickly in the second half.
Yeah, I think that's the phrase I used. It was a bit of a reality check, wasn't it? And yeah, I got carried away in the Man United performance, if I'm being honest. And Nocky's been on at me all week to say they'll beat us, they'll do a job on us, and he was right, wasn't he? He was spot on. I agree with Mark. You can't be too downbeat, I don't think. The one thing I would say is that the difference in class for me between the two sides was enormous. The way they are well drilled and the way they play. I had my lad with me who's 11, and obviously he's learning the game. And I just said, just watch how they play, because that's the best way to lead. I think they're the best team I've seen. I said it last season. I genuinely think they're the best ball-playing team in the league, and I'm including Man City now. I've not seen a team play like that from the back. And then you see our donut in goal, who is just absolutely clueless with the ball at his feet, let's be honest. Chalk and cheese. The way Dunk just rolls it to steal all the time in the world, totally calm, plays it 1-2. That's how you play football, isn't it? And for me, the gulf was massive. And I think the only thing I'd say is if we probably did go in front, I think they had another 2 or 3 gears to find, because when they turned it on, let's be honest, we could not cope for those 10 minutes. And you can pull players' individual errors and defence. I think they just blew us away for 10 minutes and we didn't know what to do about it.
Steve, we've had a high, we've had a low from the pundits. Are you sitting somewhere in the middle of Tyler and Nocky?
I think I am, after watching it, sort of reflecting on it and watching some of the highlights back. I know it's only highlights on Match of the Day, but yeah, I am somewhere in the middle, because yesterday I left a football game before the final whistle for the first time ever. Admittedly, if I was commentating on a game, that would be a bit awkward. If I did that, so that that's part of the reason why I never have. But genuinely, as a fan, that's the first time I've left before the final whistle. Again, also influenced by I just thought let's get an earlier train. But I could have waited for a later train. But it was when Mateus Nunes got sent off. When Mateus got sent off, I thought just that was the final straw. So I was frustrated right after the game. Proper in negative mode. But after watching back the highlights, I think, as has been pointed out, if you look at it, if Silva scores that 1-on-1 and Aït-Nouri scored, we could have been 2-1 up at half time. Aït-Nouri had a great chance as well later on, admittedly, after they'd scored 4. But I think you also do have to take your hats off to Brighton. Fair play to a Brighton fan who, because I was in work yesterday morning and got the train from Birmingham New Street. So I got on a train full of Brighton fans, and there was a Brighton fan on the phone going, "Yeah, put a tenner on Solly March." So fair play to him because he's got some money back. But no, you have to take your hats off. Mitoma's goal, yes, we could have hacked him down, but Mitoma's goal, he turned into the Japanese Maradona, didn't he? And those 3 goals. I think the embarrassing thing is that it's 3 goals in the space of 9-10 minutes for us from a defensive point of view. But the way that they picked us off, I saw someone say on Twitter yesterday, "Oh, yeah, it was basic balls." That they were class balls in, absolute class, over the top. Yes, you could question some of our positioning, and I think that's something that I'm sure we're going to delve into. Defensively, there was a bit of naivety. But Brighton are class, and I do agree that they're one of the best teams that I've seen in the flesh in recent seasons.
Let's try and, I'm going to try and take some positives. I know it's hard after you've been spanked 4-1, but in reality, we are where we thought we'd be. When the fixtures came out, when the new manager came in with the old manager, regardless, it was a horrible start to the season, and we're exactly where we thought we'd be. However, the performances are better than I expected. Now, performances mean nothing without goals and points, as Tyler and Lockie often point out, and correctly so. However, Tyler, just coming to you, the only disappointment was the first half was not taking the chances. For me, and I know we've talked about this privately as well, it was almost a match for the Man U performance in the first half. Again, creating great chances without scoring. So there are some positives there, aren't there?
Yeah, 100%. And I didn't mean to come across too negative in my first, speech tonight. I was trying to give credit to Brighton, so I just think they're far superior. The first half was good. We matched them. We maybe even edged them sort of last 20 minutes going into it. But without being cynical, it's boring. I'm just sick of talking about if we take this chance and if we take that chance. Look at their 3 goals and how clinical those finishes were. Brutal finishes. They were. And Fabio looked like he'd never seen a goalkeeper before when he was played through 1-on-1. Aït-Nouri, who normally has composure, you'd expect to do better. But, it's boring. But you are right, there are positives. I went in at half-time feeling pretty good. I think we matched a very good side. And I like the way we did match them up as well. I mean, I use the word naive, and I think it's naive because we lost the game, but I saw Mark use the word brave. And I can't sit here and criticise Gary O'Neill because I've been bored watching Wolves for 3 years. So to actually have the balls to match up to a Brighton and to play them at their game, fair play to him, I thought. It worked first half. It just didn't work second half. That's
a really good point, Tony. You've taken one of my questions that I've written down earlier on, because I know we even talked about it before when the 3 of us had a drink before the game, that we said, well, you in particular said, at least at Man United, we had a go. It was entertaining. It was fun. The players looked like they enjoyed it. We looked like a football team. They looked like somebody that could score a goal against most teams if they could finish. Would you agree with that sentiment, Mark?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've spoken so many times about the last couple of years where we've kind of almost been defeated before we even walked out on the pitch because the setup is to not lose. And, most of us always agree that we'd rather go down fighting than just turn up to try and stop. And that's what we did yesterday. And we were slow to start the second half, and we just got done good and proper. But, we did have a go. And even after that, even when we were 4-0 down, we were still going at them and still looking for a goal. Like at Man United, when they went ahead, we tend to, up the tempo a little bit and still went searching for a goal. So I can only look at the positives for that, and I agree entirely.
Steve, I don't think there's a bunch of players. I know we'll go on to the halftime bit in a bit because someone's asked a specific question about in terms of the visuals, the player coming out the tunnels and the warmth and stuff. But the performance don't reflect on a bunch of players that aren't bought in to the new manager's philosophy, or a bunch of players that aren't trying, don't respect him. All I've seen in those two games is a load of guys, probably a little bit too much with Matheus Nunes, is give absolutely everything. I've not seen anyone giving up. I've seen people switching off. There's a difference between switching off and losing your concentration and not trying. But despite the 2 defeats, despite the goals, Wolves didn't stop till the end.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely fair. I think one of the moments that typified that was Matheus Cunha tracking back when Aït-Nouri had gone. It might have been after the chance that he missed in the first half, because Aït-Nouri was right at the end of the pitch. They went on a break. Matheus Cunha tracked all the way back into the left back position, got a tackle in, and brought the ball back forward. And I thought, and I just thought that was superb commitment and just an example of that. And he wasn't the only one. But while I'm talking about Cunha, I will say I really like him. He seems committed. I've only interviewed him once, but he seemed like a really nice guy when I interviewed him.
Very positive.
Yeah, really positive. Really always plays with a smile on his face, has got the tricks, but as has been pointed out, he's not the only one, but it is just that final. That 39 attempts in 2 games we've had, but only 1 goal to show for it, the header from Wang. It's plain for everybody to see. I don't think you can doubt the commitment in the opening 2 games at all. But it is just that glaring, obvious problem that we can't score enough goals. But I guess on reflection, you do have to be encouraged. The only thing that worries me is, do you remember when we were first introduced to Bruno Ball?
Yeah, that's my next point I was going to bring up, but you take it and go. Yeah.
Yeah. When we had Bruno Ball, and it was really exciting. It was front foot, it was attacking, it was going for the jugular, but we lost the opening 3 games, and we're now 2 games in, 2 defeats. We'll go on to the Everton game and we can talk about that very soon. Especially, I've got some things to say after watching them today. But yeah, that's the only thing that worries me a little bit. That's why I'm reserving judgment, should I say? I'm not getting overexcited. I'm not getting too negative. I'm reserving judgment because it's 2 games in, but there are encouraging signs. But there is just the glaring obvious that we can't score.
I mean, they said it, Mark. We watch Match of the Day together when we come home. Drowned our sorrows a little bit as well. I think it was Danny Murphy that pretty much said, if Wolves can continue to create those chances, the goals will come. He was quite positive. I think they were more complimentary to how brilliant Brighton were, as opposed to how bad Wolves were defensively, which I think is fair to a degree. But surely, if you keep creating those good opportunities and match the stats that we have so far, surely the goals will come.
They will, and it's a probability game. I mean, of course they may not, but the likelihood is they probably will. I think once the goals do start going in, it's going to instill confidence into everyone. Like Steve said, I'm not getting too carried away. I'm reserving judgment until after the Everton game. But I think we are going to be under quite a bit of pressure to get something at Everton, especially given after what Villa have done to them today. So yeah, whilst it is probable that we'll turn it around, the pressure it's going to be quite high, I think. But they're professionals; they need to go out there and keep doing their thing. And Nunes is missing, isn't he? After that silly sending off, so I fully expect Hwang to come in for him. He's our goal scorer at the moment. That's one guy that does know where the goals are. I might even take the kind of onus off the rest of the team to carry us through for a little bit.
I know we talk about XG a lot, Tyler, but I can't see how professional footballers, if they're going to keep getting those chances, aren't going to turn them round. My only concern is, as Steve talked about with Bruno Ball, will the manager have a bit more fear now that we've had this reality check? Because in theory, Wolves have played 75% of the time so far very, very well. The 25% they took their guard down, they got that 10-minute slap in. I'm going to class the second. I mean, after they scored those goals, Wolves picked it up, but Brighton may have taken the foot off the gas. Yeah, they may have taken the foot off the gas. But I would say then 75% of the time we've played so far this season, Wolves have played well.
My challenge with XG isn't with XG. It's with XG with Wolverhampton Wanderers. Because
Nice.
you two boys are sitting there and saying it's going to change, it's going to change. For 3 seasons, we've averaged less than a goal a game. So you're talking about what might happen, whereas I'm talking about what has happened in the last
Fair.
3 seasons. And there's no change in personnel, Kuna aside, but Kuna's career figures tell you he's not an out-and-out goal scorer. So where are the goals coming from? They're not going to come from Pedro Neto because he's not prolific. Podence and Neves are our 2 top scorers last season. They've gone. Hwang, for me, is the only one who looks like he's got any composure to score a goal. And Hwang can't score all 38 of them. So my concern with XG, as a philosophy, is fine. But other teams score goals as a normal thing. Look at the goals going in today, 3, 4, 3, all over the place. We just don't score goals. So I genuinely don't see how it does change unless the personnel's different, but we're going with the same personnel that we've had last season. And Fabio, reserve judgment's been used tonight. I'll reserve judgment until he's had a bit of a run in the side. But like you said, he's got to take that chance. It's bread and butter.
I think he had too much time. I know that sounds ridiculous, but if he's got no time to think, he could have taken a touch, stopped the ball, and picked his side. He had so much time.
I think he thought he was offside.
I was with Mark. I thought he was
distracted. He was distracted. I think, which he shouldn't be, because top striker should just carry on and finish it. But I think he was distracted, thinking he was going to be offside. I don't want to sound cliche Wolves, but pre-injury Raul Jimenez would have finished that.
Yeah, that's fair. I just want to jump back onto your point, Tyler, and bring it onto someone else, or you can answer it yourself. I don't mind. You're saying about Wolves creating chances and missing them, and that's been an issue for a few years. It has. But equally, Wolves haven't created as many chances consistently as they have these 2 open games. It happened again for Bruno Lage in those games, and that was freakish that we had an 8 XG in the games. But if Wolves continue with this philosophy, surely it has to change. If they go into the shell, we're going to repeat in the same what's happened with the last few managers. KG football, limited, trying to hang on to 17th or better. Is the manager going to be backed to stick with this philosophy that he believes in, that has created enough for Wolves to score multiple goals in the first few games?
That's the big question. And you know, there's people criticising O'Neill and the people. He can't put the ball in the back of the net. He can't do any more than that. So I can't really answer your question. I don't want to sit on the fence, but I personally don't see how it does change as if the personnel's still the same. Like I said, look how Brighton took those chances. The first goal, as soon as he got in our penalty box, the whole ground knew who was going to score. Wasn't in doubt. As soon as those balls are flashed across the box, you know it's going in the back of the net. You just don't think we're ever going to score. You just don't. So my personal opinion is I don't see how it changes unless there's potentially a personnel change, which I don't think there'll be because of the obvious situation at the club.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Do you have any thoughts on that, Steve, in terms of sticking out the philosophy, or will the manager go into his shell?
It's difficult to tell, isn't it? Because going back to Bruno Ball, he changed the philosophy. You know,
for Watford away as well.
Yeah, that didn't last, did it? In terms of the front foot football, I think you've got to, and this is probably what most managers would say. I think you've got to adapt to certain situations. You've got to be adaptable. And I think there were signs that I think Gary O'Neill did that with Bournemouth last season. You know, they didn't play that way all the time. You know, I think when his first game in charge was against us, wasn't it? The 0-0 draw, 0-0. Which came after a 9-0 spanking. They weren't front foot football that night, were they? Mm-hmm. You know, he came in and shored them up and just made them really hard to beat. And lo and behold, we couldn't put the ball in the back of the net, which is what we're talking about again. You know, I do think you've got to be adaptable. A modern manager has to be adaptable. I don't think he's going to go front foot football all the time. Let's put it that way. You know, will he change things for Everton next week? Will he make a tweak in formation? That's probably something we can come on to later on in the episode. We'll have to wait and see.
Let's go through the team, but before we do that, you are listening to episode 69 of the Wolves Report with BBC WM's Steve Herman, our Director of Football, Chris Tyler, and former Chelsea and Fulham coach, Mr. Mark Hole, as well as myself, Ryan Lester. We'll start off now with the player ratings and opinions. This one absolutely has to be yours, Tyler. Jose Sarr.
Shambles. I'm sorry, he's bordering liability now for me. We sort of criticised him for the Man U game because he was in no man's land. His distribution yesterday was disgusting. His touch clearly puts everybody on edge. I'm probably being uber harsh, but I don't think he did enough for the second goal either. I'm not sure that Welbeck strike's great. He palmed it away, but I'm not sure that's brilliant. The third or fourth goal, was it the fourth goal? I'm sure he could come out and command the 6-yard box and wipe someone out. For me, he's a shadow of the player he was 2 seasons ago, and he's dropped for me. I think he's that bad. He's got to be dropped from the side at the moment.
For me, with Jose Sarr, I feel like if the opponents have an attack earlier on and he pulls off a good save or comes out for a catch, I feel like then that dictates what kind of game he's had. But if he doesn't get that in his locker, and the first thing, serious thing, if he lets a goal in, then I feel like that crumbles him. I feel like he's a massive confidence keeper, because when he had that ridiculous season and his stats were the best in Europe, if not the world, for like one-on-one saves, he was absolutely phenomenal. But I felt in those games, because of the way we were playing, he had an opportunity to make saves earlier on. Whereas on Saturday, he was just picking the ball out, and then his head completely went then. He was very, very poor, though. Moving on to the back line, Steve, Nelson Semedo, probably one of the best players last week. I felt a little bit sorry for him yesterday because he was clearly asked to push on and go forwards. So are we going to criticise him for obeying his instructions, or has he left his centre back in the lurch?
I think you're right to praise him for last week. I think that's one of the best performances I saw at Man United. This one, not so much. I think he lost his man for one of the goal. Didn't really track back that well. Wasn't the only one though that didn't track back, I have to say. I mean, are we giving them official markings out of 10 for this, or what do you want?
Just a verb. Not you have to be a score. Just a verbal marking. Yeah, we daren't give numbers this early in the season.
I was gonna say, yeah, let's not be too harsh. It was just, it was below average.
He seems to struggle against Brighton, doesn't he? For whatever reason, Mitoma, one of the best naturally gifted fast forwards in the Premier League at the moment, and he does struggle against him. Mark, moving on to Ryan Aït-Nouri, again, nowhere near the standards of last week, but again, he's been asked to push up high, and then you're leaving Max Kilman exposed.
Yeah, the thing is, I guess Max Kilman's a little bit quicker than Craig Dawson, isn't he? So, but that aside, I mean, Aït-Nouri's had 2 really good opportunities to score yesterday. That one on his left in the first half, and he's just got to slide it into the corner. And then that one in the second half late on. I know the game was pretty much dead and buried, but just, you don't need to take a touch there. Just get your right foot on it and just place it in the net. So, at that end of the pitch, where we expect him to be a bit better, he's not been. And almost similar to Semedo, really, that one where he just got beaten to the ball. As a fullback, you cannot be letting the striker or the winger, whatever Brighton player it is, you cannot be letting him get in front of you there. I mean, do whatever it takes to just nudge him out the way.
Take the yellow card.
Yeah, and it's just been a cheap. I mean, come off in the post in the end, didn't that one? But it's just such a smelly goal to concede. So it's a bad day at the office for Aït-Nouri.
Tyler, moving on to Max Kilman, who was probably left exposed. It's hard to give any defender praise when they've conceded 4, but a tough day for Max.
Yeah, I sort of forgot about his performance, really. I don't think there was anything to really praise him for, but I don't think he was atrocious. There's a lot of talk about his leadership or his lack of. That's one thing that noticeable yesterday, wasn't it? I backed him as someone that could be captain and probably should be, but you've got to pull the troops together, haven't you? You've got to rally. You've got to stop the silly bookings, that Nunes was getting. You've just got to get hold of your team ultimately, and he didn't do that. But I don't think they were helped, and someone else will come on to Dawson. They weren't helped in the way we were set up, trying to almost go man for man with them, basically. Because if they do turn and spin like they did quite often in the first half, you're just in trouble, aren't you? And you're facing your own goal. he read the first goal far too late. He should have come across far earlier to see that danger. So, just like you said, anyone in that back four doesn't get any praise at all, really.
Steve, on to Craig Dawson.
Yeah, I think you can say the same things that Tyler's just said about Kilman. The game passed him by, and we looked just a bit lost. I think one extra thing to add on Kilman, I thought he was, he looked sluggish on a couple of those breakaways. He looked really sluggish and slow to react.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you can say that about Dawson as well. And as a back four collectively, to be honest.
Yeah, tough day at the office. But if you're Max Kilman's not slow, but he's certainly not quick, and Craig Dawson has never been quick. And if you're taking the pace out of defence in Semedo and Ait Nouri because of the pressing football we're playing, it's a risk and reward football. Unfortunately, there was lots of risk and no reward. So yeah, tough day at the office for the back four. Tyler, moving on to Pedro Neto. We were quick to praise Pedro last week, but I thought he was totally ineffective yesterday.
Has Mark said something to annoy you? You're not giving him the next one, or?
No, I've got some other one for Mark.
He's got quite a lot of flack, hasn't he, for not helping his fullback out, for not driving to the byline and putting balls in the box. And I think it's fair criticism, really. Against United, we saw glimpses of old Pedro, didn't we? That burst of pace, beating his man.
Can we cut him some slack because if he's playing against Estupinian, one of the best
James Milner, right? It's naive management. Milner's got an early yellow card. Put Neto on him and just say, I mean, it's basic park management, that is. A 38-year-old right back's on the yellow card after 20 minutes.
And we didn't put one of our fastest players against him. Yeah, absolutely.
That's not Pedro Neto's fault if he's not being told to do that. But I don't know, a bit like what Steve said, just passed him by, didn't it? Didn't get involved, wasn't good defensively, didn't look a threat, really. Just a bit of a nothing performance, really.
Yeah, disappointing. I do think Pedro's naturally better on his natural side on the left.
Yeah,
I think. I think he likes just to push his man and get some quality in, but we don't really see that much of him now. Mark, moving on to Joe Gomez.
I mean, he was kind of, I'm not going to say ineffective. He won a few challenges, but he was pressed so quick he gave the ball away sometimes. He's going to have better games than this for sure. I just feel like for him, much as like the other midfielders at Lamina, I just don't think he was very effective yesterday.
Moving on to Mario Lamina, Steve. Again, what I would say about the midfield and probably the forwards and even the fullbacks, that most of these guys had a decent first half. They just got badly exposed for like that 15-minute spell. So yeah, your take on Mario Lamina with an alleged £27 million bid from Liverpool.
I mean, as we sort of said before, but effort and determination is there. I don't think you can knock that, but I think it passed him by as well. I think the way that how quick, and I think we have to give Brighton credit for how they, bypassed our midfield so quickly. They pick people. They're so good at dragging you into a position and then picking you off with a pass. And I think it didn't give Lamina an opportunity to do what he can do best, which is basically get his foot stuck in and get on the ball and help us link up the play. So ineffectual as well. I think it was an ineffectual performance as well.
I think for both Gomez and Lamina, the amount of time they probably gave the ball away as much as they kept it. And when you look at comparison with Billy Gilmore in a similar position for Brighton, 99% pass accuracy.
Yeah, he was very neat and tidy in there. I'll stick with yourself then, Mark. As well as the scoreline, my biggest frustration of the day was Matheus Nunes because of the size of the game next week at Everton, to be missing out on him in what is a huge game for Wolves early on in the season. This was my biggest disappointment of the day. I love Matheus, what he can bring, what he can do, the way he travels with the ball. He can just break it up and go. But he's massively let himself and his teammates down at the end of that game.
Yeah, it's going to be a big miss. And you know, when you look at the two bookings, the first one for time wasting, I mean, it's just
Silly.
stupid. And the thing is, I mean, how many players have been booked already in the game before he's done that? He's got to be smarter than that and learn from other people's mistakes. You know, I like that he's got a fire in his belly, and I like that he's got a little bit of edge to him. But you got to learn to control it, because he could potentially cost us. You know, you can mark someone like Cunha out the game if you know he's going to turn and spin, but it's harder to do it when you've got two, three players that can do that in the team. And to go over at the end like that and you know, have a pop at, I can't remember who pushed over. Was it Lewis Dunk? He pushed over and then had another pop and then come back for a third time. It's just like, it was always coming. And, you know, even before that, he's just let his man run, hasn't he, for when Cisco just ran through for was it the second or third goal? So he's going to be really disappointed. And you know, I think most of the fans are as well. He's not let himself, he's let himself down there.
Yeah, such a talent that had such a good start to the season as well. Very frustrating. Tyler, probably onto Wolves' best player of the day and probably best player of the season so far, Matthias Cunha.
Yeah, was it Steve that said at the start, I really like him, and you can't help but like him, can you? The way he plays like we'd all play. He gets the ball, he's like a kid in the playground, he just wants to turn and run for the goal. And he showed glimpses of what he did at United when he beat people and Span. Needs a bit of work on his final ball. I think even Match of the Day spotted it, didn't they? There was a couple of times where he could have played people in. When he did play Fabio in, it was brilliant.
Again, I think he's better. Sorry, I think he's better when he's got no time to think. When it's quick, there's a quick ball on, he finds it. But like with Fabio, when he finds himself in loads of space, there's so many decisions to choose from.
Just needs to get his head up a little bit, doesn't he? But he's the one shining light from the two games, isn't he? You can't really fault his performance yesterday. It wasn't his fault we let 4 goals in, and he was constantly trying. And yeah, that's all you can ask for, really.
He's the one player I want to give a bit of focus to, Steve. Man of the match yesterday, probably Wolves' best player. One of the best 2 players at Old Trafford as well. When he joined, I thought he was going to be quick. And last season, I didn't really see that. I thought he had a few moments and I didn't really see him break away. Whatever's happened pre-season, he looks quicker, he looks stronger, he looks more determined. Although he doesn't have the end product yet, you can see why Wolves have paid the money. He looks like a player that has the potential to fill that price tag now.
Yeah, I might have mentioned this when I was on last time, but when I did that interview with him, one of the things that stuck out was that he open and honestly said, I didn't think the Premier League was this hard. Admittedly, that was after the defeat at Manchester City. So he would have known how hard that was that day. But I think that's, that was an interesting assessment that, he's come from La Liga and played against some quality players there, but he's come into the Premier League. Everyone knows about the reputation, but clearly for him, he didn't know how hard it was going to be until he's been out on the pitch. So maybe he just needed some time to adjust, needed a pre-season with the team. And so maybe he has got a bit of swagger about him. That's what he sort of, Samba style, wasn't it? Sort of swashbuckling Samba style, going for it. And like you said, that's playing with that freedom. It's really good to see, and it's really exciting to see. It's just the end product.
Tyler, we seem to have found his position that, I mean, you and Nocky have talked about this last season, but him picking up the ball from deeper, it's a whole new bit of ammunition for Wolves. That's look at what he's supposed to do. I'd like to see him try it against the centre-backs, because if you can run past centre midfielders, you should surely be able to do it past centre-backs as well. I want to see him do that. I want to see him take on the centre-back. The way he's brushed past midfielders the last few games has been fantastic.
Yeah, that's a good call out. Can we get him that sort of 10, 20 yards higher up the pitch? And then he's running at, like you said, centre-backs. And if he's running at players like Keenan Tarkowski next week, you'd like to think he could get the better of those, wouldn't you? So that's a great call out, I think. It's just how we find a way of doing it. We'll come on to Everton, won't we? But he's got some big decisions to make, hasn't he? But he's the one player at the moment that seems pretty much undroppable.
Last but not least, Mark, Fabio Silva. Now, I've backed Fabio Silva a lot. I still think there's talent. I think he went away last year and did what he had to do. He looked a bit. I think he fed in. I think he fed in Ait-Nouri for his chance. He did link the play quite nicely when he didn't have any time to think. But the one moment, as we talked about earlier on, when he should have scored the goal, He really fluffed his lines.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's easy to single out a striker as the scapegoat when we don't score goals. But, the miss aside, I did think his link-up play was pretty good. Some decisions, he missed the opportunity, but his work rate is good. I think he's going to come good for us. I'm absolutely certain of it. He's worked under one of the best ever European strikers at PSV for 6 months or so. So he's going to have learnt a lot there. He's got all the attributes, I think, to be a really good striker. And like Steve said earlier, there was that chance, but maybe, we thought he was offside. Maybe he thought he was offside as well, And, I've seen a few different bits of analysis on that. And a lot of goalkeepers have actually come out and given Steele credit for being superbly positioned, So, I'm going to advocate for him because I think he's going to come good.
Yeah, he's certainly a talent. Whether he'll get a chance at Everton, I don't know. The one thing I would say is a positive. I never want to see a player coming off the pitch happy if he's been subbed. He was absolutely livid. But I want that. I want that hunger and desire from a player. I don't want someone coming off if they've been just okay and jogging along. He was angry, and I want that. And that shows he cares. So I know it's been questioned that he doesn't want to be here. He certainly look like to me that he's not interested. He looks like he wants to be here. He's trying. Looks like he's buying into the new philosophy. And as that goes in nicely to the next section, I'd like to talk about the philosophy and the tactics going forward. Tyler, we'll start with you on this one. We're sort of repeating ourselves a little bit, but I want to go a bit more in depth. We've talked about a long time. We want it to be fun to watch Wolves again. We want to see them have a go. We want it to be enjoyable. We want the high press. We want the fast breaks. We want to see them have a go and not tuck in and try and pinch something. We want to take the game to the opponents. And the early signs are there is a manager that is going to do that.
Yes, but I think Steve hit the nail on the head in the fact that you've got to be adaptable. And when you're getting pumped like that, you don't concede 3 goals in 9 minutes, basically all 3 goals the same. So he's got to learn that quickly. He's young, but he's not a novice. He's had pretty much a full Premier League season. So he'd have set up against Brighton before, set up against Man United before. So he's got to learn quick and on the job, hasn't he? That's my dog going bonkers, so apologies if you can hear him. But I don't think he likes Gary O'Neill very much. But yes, I can't sit here and criticise it because it's what I've been calling for 2 or 3 years. I've wanted to see some attacking, forward-thinking football. And it's what we've seen the last 2 games. And it's a shame we've come away with no points because on another day we could have at least 1, maybe 3 on the board, and you're up and running, aren't you?
You could probably have 4 on the board. I mean, if you take those chances. But it's
the 2 guys are right. I'm reserving judgment, and you get slaughtered for saying it. And obviously, Saturday is not a must-win game by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a must-perform game. It's a game where Wolves have to look like a decent Premier League team, and we have to score goals. So I'll reserve judgment slightly. But what I've seen so far, apart from bonkers 10 minutes, it's tough to be critical, really.
Steve, putting your broadcasting hat on, life is going to be way more fun commentating on a team that's playing football as opposed to tucking in and just hoping they get something.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think going back to that 0-0 at Bournemouth last season, I did that game on my own. A 0-0 on midweek 0-0.
As you drive home.
Commentating on it. I stayed overnight on that one actually. To be fair, but that was the best bit. But yeah, it's I only slept.
Yeah, no comment. No comment there, Steve.
It's always going to be more exciting with more goals and better football. Controversially, with my broadcaster hat on, I did more of Villa last season, and under Unai Emery and the football they were playing, that was exciting to commentate and watch. So if Gary O'Neill continues with this style, then yes, it is going to be exciting, but only if we score goals. That's the most exciting bit about watching football and commentating on football at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Mark, from a coaching point of view, obviously you mentioned before that you did some coaching at Charlton, Fulham and Chelsea. It's way more fun to coach positive attacking football than it is? And I'd say it's probably easier to coach attacking football, or would you say it's easier to coach defensive football?
I think it's easier to coach defensive football purely because, it's about shape and organisation, right? And I think that's where we got done yesterday. You could see Brighton targeting Dawson from the first 5 minutes. As soon as they could try to get the ball into midfield, they were pushing that ball straight into their striker to pull Dawson out of position. And then the second man runs were going in behind, like for the Matoma goal, when he cut inside and Dawson was pulled outside by Solly March's run. So those sorts of things are easier to coach, when people in certain positions, you should be here, there, and, and as long as you've got the whole unit, the pressure, cover, depth, and they're all concentrating, that should be easier to kind of hold that sort of formation. And with attacking players, I mean, you're working with talent. I mean, how are you going to coach someone like Lionel Messi what to do in certain situations? I mean, you can provide him with opportunities to have space to do his thing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it sounds like you prefer to coach attacking football, but defensive football is easier. You are listening and watching episode 69 of the Wolves Report with BBC WM Steve Herman, our director of football Chris Tyler, and former Chelsea and Fulham coach Mark Cole. We are 41 minutes in. Let's hit away with some questions. Greg starting far enough away here. Surely, with the owners being there, they have to find some funds for Gary O'Neill. We need a centre back, a midfielder, a striker to score us some beep goals. Tyler,
I've said it before. I just don't see it. I don't see where new players are going to come from. If we can raise. We talked about it, Mark, didn't we? If you can raise sort of 9-10 for Podence and get that centre half in, that makes sense to me.
The lad from the Bundesliga, elite, is it elite?
Yeah, striker, I just don't see it because we've talked about it before. They've signed Kuna, Fabio, and Sasa. There's 3 centre forwards, so I don't see a striker coming in. Midfielder, you'd have said we were okay in that position, but we've got suspension now, and we're sort of thinking about.
And there's an alleged bid for Mario. I don't know how true that is, but if there is interest in Mario.
So, Bertrand Traore, have we seen enough of him to know we can do it? I sort of get the midfielder argument because it might mean Hodge could get a year on loan, but for me, a centre-back's a must, and I'd probably be looking for like another forward, not necessarily a striker, but like I don't want to say his name, a Diego Jota type that can play anywhere across that front line and is just a bit of a nuisance, but can also find the back of the net. They're the 2 signings I'd be looking to make. But I don't think they will.
I don't know why we're not utilising the loan with an option to buy more. If we're struggling for money that much, we've done it with Aït-Nouri, we've done it with Gomez. I don't know why and Cunha even. I don't know why we can't explore that option.
Is that though a risky option? If I'm not one of these I know a lot of people have said relegated, we're going to get relegated. I'm not one of those, like I said, reserving judgment. But is that a risky thing to do? Or, well, I suppose only if it's a loan with a permanent, I guess. There aren't many places that do loan with an option. Wolves do it to lots of teams. We give an option. But most people are going to want loan with a permanent at the end of it, aren't they? And that's a little bit of a risk.
I'd be surprised if there wasn't another centre-back coming, whether it's a loan. I say it's most likely to be a loan. I mean, you'd expect Johnny to find a club. You'd expect Podence to find a club. I wouldn't be happy if we sold any of our squad now because of how thin we are on the ground. And we've already seen a suspension, and now that's one of our best ball carriers out the team. And it's a different setup already. We've got a problem. So I don't think we can let any of that first team squad, but kind of accepting that Podence and Johnny are going to go. If that raises 10, 15 million, I think we have to go in and get that centre back because an injury to Dawson or injury to Kilman, I don't dislike Totti, but equally, we need more depth. We need more depth than that. Greg, thank you for your question. Steve Phipps has got an absolutely belting question here. We talked about it a bit earlier when we overlapped, but thoughts on O'Neill staying aggressive, positive, man for man against a team like Brighton, naive or brave? Steve.
The defending for 9 minutes was naive, but I think it was tactically brave. I think it was just. It's difficult to change things tactically when they blew us away that quickly. to be able to, I suppose I'm sitting on the fence, I guess, because like I said, the defending was naive, but I think that was more credit to Brighton. I think it was more credit to Brighton, those goals. There was naivety there, but I'm not sure whether I'd lay the blame on O'Neill for his tactics for those 9 minutes. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I think like I said earlier, the result answers the question, doesn't it? If you get a 1-1, it's brave, isn't it? But when you've lost 4-1, surely it can only be classed as naive. And I think it was almost the first half, I thought, but strangely, where we almost looked a bit more ragged, because when they played out, they were 1-on-1. They were man for man, weren't they, basically? And I think that's why Dawson struggled so much. But the one thing I do like is what you've all said, is that we kept going even at 4-0. We kept trying to score. We kept creating chances. And that's the one thing to be positive about. So I think you're sitting on the fence, Steve, but I'm the same. I think it's a bit of both, really.
Mark, we watched a few of the pre-season friendlies together, and it was a slow progression throughout pre-season. There wasn't really a lot of pressing. And against Stade Rennais, it was pretty good. But the pressing at Old Trafford was as good as it's seen. So if that's the implementation from Gary O'Neill, when he's only been there a few days, and that first half performance from Saturday, 9 days in or 10 days into his tenure as Wolves boss, I'm going to give him. I know what your answer is going to be here, but I think it was really, really brave.
Yeah, it was. I mean, like the guys have said, it's both naive and brave at the same time. I mean, the defence have switched off, but I do, there's things to work with there. And, Gary O'Neill going to training this week, and he'll be, I can't see anyone other than Man City doing that to us this season. So there's that to be thankful for. But that said, he will be looking at, how our defensive line will be shaping up in training in certain situations, and maintaining that pressing, because I think we should be high pressing, because if you allow a team to play, they're going to pick us off anyway. So you're better off putting them under pressure, trying to make them make mistakes higher up the pitch, where they're further away from our goal and they can't hurt us as much. And
especially now, I know Mateus is out, but if you find Pedro Neto's form, if you've got Mateus Cunha, Mateus Nunes, Ryan Ait-Nouri to a degree, all guys that can carry the football, if you're pressing and winning the ball and attacking it there, surely that has to be the way going forward. But equally, I think Wolves will get rewards for this style of football playing against. I mean, you've played against two teams that are going to be challenging for the top four. The two of the elite teams in the most lucrative league, the best league. It's not the most lucrative now, but it's certainly the high standard of football in European football at the moment. So I hope he continues it. I hope this becomes our philosophy. And bearing in mind, Brighton have been laying the foundations with Potter and then on to the De Zerbi. They've been doing this for years. Gary O'Neill's been there like less than 2 weeks. So we have to give him some credit for that for me. So I agree with you guys, defensively naive, but brave for actually having a go. Because I've got to be honest, if we tucked in and we lost 2-0 yesterday and didn't have a shot, I think I'd be more angry than I was coming out of the ground yesterday. At least we've got something to build on. Thank you for your question, Steve. This is an interesting one as well, that was mentioned earlier on. Kev Taylor says, what was O'Neill's halftime team talk? The body language after the break was absolutely shocking. Now, I don't know if anyone's seen the video to put this into context. Though, coming out the tunnel, there was a lot of down faces, heads down, slowly walking out. There was no real running. Now, I don't know if we're reading too much of that, but then you would look into those first 15 minutes when Wolves were absolutely blown away. It did seem a little bit strange. Did you pick up at all on that, Steve?
Personally, no, and I haven't seen the video. I think, I mean, yeah, what would have O'Neill's team talk have been? For me, it would have been
praise, surely.
Yeah, it would have been keep going. You're creating chances. He'd have spoken about the XG, because he spoke about that at the end of the game, and I'm sure he would have just said, keep doing what you're doing, along the lines of that. I mean, the body language 9 minutes later.
Yeah, well, that.
Down. I think that's reading. Personally, I think that's reading too much into it. They're not going to be coming out singing and dancing, are they?
Yeah, it's been. Well, the difference was Brighton all stormed out with their chests up and ran past the Wolves players who'd been walking out for like 30 seconds, and it was just a general plod. And it was just a sort of like a a bit of a downbeat persona about it, and I didn't really understand it. But Kev was the first one to ask, but multiple people have asked the question. That's why I wanted to ask. I don't think you can read too much into that. Whether you want them to put a frontal and sprint out, I don't know. But
I think Mark made a good point before we came on out. Whether or not you think it is or isn't, it's not a good look.
No.
However you dress it up, it doesn't look very good. So there might be nothing behind it, but as a paying supporter, it still doesn't look great. And I think that's where the issue might be.
Absolutely. Thank you for your question, Kev Taylor. I know multiple people asked that question, but Kev was first, so I'll put his up. Richie G asking a tough question here. Mark, as the one with the coaching qualifications, you can have this absolute stinker. Richie G asks, what coaching and management experience has Gary O'Neil got for Wolves to be so optimistic?
Well, I mean, number one, I mean, if you don't know the reading beforehand, he's very well respected in the coaching community. You know, you just read his testimonials. Everyone really rates him at his attention to detail. I mean, Matt Hobbs, he's done very little wrong for Wolves in his short time at the club. And he was another one who was blown away by his interview. He's been at Liverpool Academy. I mean, you don't work at Liverpool Academy if you're not a good coach. You know, they're one of the top academies in Europe, even the world probably. And even then, you know, when Scott Parker got the sack at Bournemouth early, he got the job prematurely by everyone's admission. But, you know, mission complete. He kept them up. You know, whether it was good to watch or not, he kept them up. You know, I know he divides opinion with Bournemouth. You know, it wasn't fun to watch. But, you know, he said by his own admission when he took the Wolves job, he had to do what he could with the players he had at his disposal. And I think, you know, we spoke about it last week. With the talent he's got at Wolves now and what we're seeing already, you know, he's bringing the best out of the Wolves players that we've been seen playing with the handbrake on under J-Lo. So I think there's plenty of reasons to be optimistic for us.
Absolutely. You can't play darts with lollipops. Thank you for your question, Richie D. Much appreciated. Tyler, you can have this next one. When do we get into the territory of must-win games? How long will the Gary O'Neil honeymoon period last? The Prem is ruthless. Matt Whitten asking a fantastic question there. Tyler.
I think we learned from last season, didn't we, that you don't mention must-win games with Wolves Twitter knocking about. Saturday is not must-win. Of course, it isn't, because we lost 3 games at the start of the season before and finished comfortably mid-table. For me, like I said, I use the phrase must performance, and this is the game where the pressure's on, like Mark said. United was a bit of a free hit. Brighton, we were optimistic, but realistically didn't expect a lot. Going to Everton, there'll be the pressure of getting a result. If he comes away with that and we've lost, what's the next game? Is it Liverpool? Is it Liverpool maybe? You know, you could be looking at 4 defeats in a row, and then you're scratching around for a win, aren't you? Then it does start to become squeaky bum time. So I think the honeymoon period's over. I think Saturday confirmed that already. If he didn't think he had a tough job on his hands, I think he knows that now. We can argue all day long if the players are as good as we think they are. We've talked about that in the past as well. But you just got to get off the mark, haven't you? You've got to get points on the board at some point. And looking at Everton the last 2 games, I'd want to go and get something there.
Just to confirm, Wolves fixtures, Everton away on the 26th, then Blackpool in the League Cup at home on the 29th, and then Crystal Palace away, live on Sky Sports on Sunday, the 3rd of September. I think it's Liverpool not far after that. So, thank you, Tyler, and thank you, Matt Whitten. As that's works nicely into then to this week's game against Everton. It's going to be a really tough game. Steve, you said you had some opinions on Everton. Goodison Park can be a horrible place to play when their team is with them, but equally when they're against them, like they could be, particularly with the owners. And if they go a goal down early, who knows what could happen. Steve Herman.
Yeah, it's a horrible press box to sit in as well.
I experienced it on Boxing Day.
Oh, you did? Yeah, of course. I forgot about that. Yeah. And I'm bigger than you, so
how dare you?
It's a tight fit in that press box. Once you're in there, you're in there.
On episode 69 of the Wolves Report.
There you go. Oh dear. You're absolutely right. I mean, my opinion of it was just from watching the Villa game. I mean, I talked about commentating on Villa last season, and how positive and they were and how good they were under Unai Emery, and they showed it again today. But Everton were terrible. They're just poor, just really weak. They haven't, much like us, their squad hasn't really changed. I know they're being linked with Willie Nonto, but really the squad hasn't changed. It's the same set of players. I expected them on the opening day of the season at home to Fulham to get a result, because I thought after the positivity of staying up on the last day, they'll put that behind them. But then they start with an opening day defeat. They don't score, and that malaise is back immediately for them. And that's what Wolves have got to capitalise on next week. You're right about the Goodison atmosphere. Yes, it is good. The Gladys end can be rocking when the team's rocking. But again, going back to games that I did last season, I did Villa Everton, and they were, Everton that day I thought were poor. They had Maupay on his own up front, and he's absolutely useless as a lone front man. Calvert-Lewin's got injured today again.
Looks like a broken cheekbone with that, judging by that. So that could be a big loss for them.
Yeah, absolutely, because the formation that Dyche likes to play with the lone man up front,
big guy at top.
Big guy at top. Maupay's not really a big guy. He can't play in that position. They don't have anyone else. So that's a loss for them next week. And I think we've talked about Gary O'Neill's tactics in terms of, being brave in the front foot football. I would continue it next week, because if you do get an early goal at Goodison, they'll crumble. I genuinely think they would crumble.
Well, just some great stuff on there, Steve, about Everton. Opening game of the season, I believe Everton were peppering Fulham. Fulham went up and scored, and they fell apart, and then Everton should have had another couple of goals. So it looks like they're confident with shot on week one. I don't know if I didn't think Villa had to do much today, to be honest. Villa were ruthlessly efficient in front of goal, but it looks quite easy for them. And I said earlier on, talking to Tyler as the game was going on, there was a real lack of pace at the back for Everton. They were just slipping those balls in left, right and centre. It looked really, really easy for them. So in terms of, Mark, the front foot football, I don't think this is a game we can change our tactics and tuck in. I think we have to be brave and try and exploit Everton's weaknesses.
Absolutely. And they're going to be absolutely terrified of players like Cunha. And we would have said Nunez. So in that respect, I think we have to put Hwang in there, because that's another guy that can run with the ball.
Pace.
He's pace. He's quick. He's strong. And I know people will disagree with this, but I do think he's skillful. He's got a little lollipop in his locker, and he'll go past people. So I think, we've got to play to our strengths there. And, they're going to try and play stinky, aren't they? They're going to try and get it onto Dwight McNeil. He's going to try lumping balls into the box.
I think he's injured as well.
Is he? Okay, fantastic. Good. But you know how Dyche plays. It's absolutestinkball.com, isn't it?
Do not check that website, whatever you do, please.
This episode 69 has been,
lived up to its name, isn't it? Keane was absolutely woeful today for Everton, isn't he? So he's going to be pretty low on confidence. If we can get Fabio and Cunha and the likes running at him, I think it's only going to end one way.
Tyler, it's a massive opportunity, but you have to say it's a game. The pressure's probably more on Everton than it is Wolves.
Yeah, I agree with everything the two chaps have said. If you can get a goal there early doors, that'll be a royal atmosphere for the Everton team to play in. On the flip side, if we concede and they do get a bit of momentum, how would that affect us? So we've just got to go there the same, positive. I agree with Mark. It's Hwang for Nunez all day in that position. Hwang's the only one, I can't believe I'm saying this, but he's the only one that looks a genuine goal threat. And I'm calling.
I can't believe you've been Sarabia for Hwang. What's happened?
But even when he set 8 just to compose, he's the only one that's got that element of composure about him where he'll turn inside, he's quick, he's sharp. I think he's justified a place already, even if Nunez wasn't.
Since the World Cup, I think Hwang has come. Sure. And he got that goal against Portugal late on. He's come back a different player. We've talked about confidence. He's got more confidence, and I think both you guys have mentioned about him being strong, and we're going to need to be strong against Tarkowski.
They're physical,
yeah. So absolutely all day, Hwang in for me.
Yeah, I think that's unanimous then. So we're all in agreement with that. Hwang comes in. right or left-hand side. I'd prefer Neto on his natural side on the left and then Hwang on the right-hand side if they want to switch over. But I think we get more from Neto when he's actually playing on his natural side. So we are coming now to the prediction part of the show. And I would love to get your first goal scorer and score prediction. No pressure, Steve Herman.
Oh, man. 3-1 Wolves. And first goal, Mateus Cunha.
Oh, absolutely loving that. Tyler?
Just for the record, I'm never being positive again in this part of the show. I predicted 3-1 Saturday, and that's just made me look absolutely stupid.
We got one, didn't we?
But then I do fancy us.
Here we go.
I'll go 2-1 with Hwang to score first.
Get in there. Mr. Mark Cole.
2-0 Hwang.
I'll take that, and I'm going to complete the quartet, and I'm going to go with Wolves 2, Everton 0, Mateus Cunha. I always say Mateus Cunha. I don't know why. And the time I didn't say, he ended up scoring. So this has been...
scored and it's your fault.
Thank you. Enjoy your trip back to China. This has been episode 69 of the Wolves Report. Thank you to BBC WM Steve Herman, Mr. Mark Cole, and our Director of Football, Chris Tyler. Look forward to you joining us again next week for the latest episode of the Wolves Report. Up the Wolves.